I need you to understand something before we start. This was supposed to be easy. This was meant to be like a fun little afternoon project. Like, I love Superman. I'll make a cute little video about it. It'll be maybe 20 minutes, half an hour if I add on the parodies and whatnot. Then I made a list, and the list kept going. And now I've watched so many different men put on tights and do the pose that when I close my eyes, when I dream, all I see is Superman. Just all the time. He has infected every part. He's coming for me, man. Here is the thing that nobody tells you. He is not just one guy. He's not even 10 guys. He's like a historical plague. He's been possessed by more actors than Hamlet, probably. There are radio Supermen, and cartoon Supermen, and direct-to-DVD Supermen, and video game Supermen, and one very earnest Lego Superman, and there's just... it never stops. I kept thinking along the way, like, okay, maybe this is the last one, and then another one would pop up and be like, hey, I voiced him in a commercial in like the 40s, and then I'd have to add it to the list. This video is me doing something deeply unnecessary. I'm probably inadvisable, but I lost my job and I can't get another one. So what are they gonna stop me? No, they're not. I don't think so. I am ranking every Superman, all of them, voices, cameos, weird TV pilots, the lot. They're all being ranked. Nobody's safe. I'm gonna judge all of them. Before we start throwing around numbers and scores, we have to answer a very basic question. Who the fuck is Superman? Literally historically first. Superman shows up in 1938 in Action Comics 1, and he's created by Joe Sousa and Jerry Siegel, and he's basically the prototype for every Superman to ever come after him ever. Before him, it's like Pulp Fiction and detectives and guys in fedoras. After him, it's capes and spandex forever. He's not just like a character, no, he's the Big Bang of all these superheroes ever. Everything explodes out of this farm boy with a red blanket, basically. Early Superman is not like the god that we think of. He can't fly, and he punches corrupt landlords, and he tosses cars around, pretty standard stuff. He's less space messiah and more very jacked union organizer. But from day one, the very obvious thing is that he helps people. Just because he can, that's like his whole thing. And after absorbing genuinely too much media of this dude, every sitcom, I didn't read the comics, but you know what, we don't have time for that. Every cartoon from the 40s, every commercial I could find, every fan film, I have boiled him down to 3 points. If you can see this, here are my rules. Rule 1, he is a nice guy. Like a genuinely good guy. Not like a Reddit nice guy. Not like a milady and then calls you a slur nice guy. I mean like a good guy. You could leave him alone with your nan and you could come back and she'd still be alive and also the dishwasher would be fixed. He saves cats and he listens and he apologizes. He's a nice guy. If Superman isn't like fundamentally nice, there is something wrong. Like in your bones, you can feel it. Rule 2, he loves Lois Lane. This is so important to me. Not optional. Lois is the human anchor that he eventually has to find his way to her or a version of her. She's the reason he's not just floating above everyone like a depressed weirdo loser. If the romance doesn't work, then the whole thing goes out the window. It's why some versions soar and some versions just kind of hover. I'm looking at you, certain interpretation that I won't name yet because I don't want to spoil the video. Rule 3, he is unfortunately super. I know there are stories like, oh, what if Superman had no powers? But listen, without the superpowers, he is just Clark. He is just a guy that works at a newspaper. The Clark Show. No matter how endearing he is, that would probably flop. He needs the vibe of mythic strength and like godlike. He is a godlike being. He needs to feel like that. Like if an asteroid showed up, he'd just be like, wait, hang on, and then he'd lob it into space. That's how I want to feel. Every single version in this video gets judged on these and also the media around him, because he doesn't just exist as his own being. I mean, you have to judge what he's in. Bear in mind, I'm not gonna judge a guy based on his worst movie. I feel like that's mean. I'm not gonna say Christopher Reeve is the worst Superman because Superman 3 was shit. I'm not the worst ever. This is a judgment of their best. I'm not just judging the actor, I'm judging Lois. I'm judging the villains. I'm judging the vibes. I'm judging the writing. If Lex Luthor sucks, points deducted. If the show looks like it was shot in a car park, points deducted. Unless, obviously, in the scenario, Superman is a parking officer, then points added. If the chemistry between Lois and Clark makes me believe that sometimes they hold hands, points added. I have a spreadsheet. It has columns. It has numbers. At one point, I found a short about a Jewish kid who finds out that the creators of Superman are Jewish, and then he feels more connected to his religion. I watched 5 minutes of it, and then my computer crashed, and I could never find it again. There's also porn. There is Superman porn, and Ryan Driller plays Superman, so maybe he's the best. I don't know. I didn't watch it, but maybe I'm missing out. There's so many. The lengths I went to for this dumb video is, you would never believe it. We start at the very beginning with the radio waves and the black and white and the weird art house shit, and we slowly crawl forward until we find the one. The best Superman. This is normal behavior. This is a very healthy use of time. I've done all the maths and shit, and so I've decided to add it all up into a nice normal 100 points. Let's begin. Star White. Before we talk about things you can actually see, we have to go way back in Preface era. The close your eyes and imagine a man, very hard era. The we say pit pit cheerio and then we give kids cigarettes and it's legal era. I think that was a little early, but you get the point. It was early. If we disregard the comics, Superman started as a voice, which is wild when you think about it. He's like the most recognizable character possibly ever. A lot of people's first experience with this was just some guy talking into a microphone. Very glamorous beginnings. So radio first. First definitive voice of Superman is Bud Collyer, which, pause, when did we stop calling people Bud? That is such a solid name. You hear Bud and you immediately get in his car. Bring back Bud. Anyway, Collyer is like the guy. He is patient zero. He is probably what you think of when you think of Superman's voice.
There you are. Safe and sound in the field.
Well, I don't know what to say.
Quite all right, Professor. Getting you and the boy out of that car was nothing. I have no name. I come from a world that no longer exists. Here in this world of yours, men would call me a Superman.
I'm not really like a podcast or audio drama person. I'm a toddler. I need jingle the keys in front of my face. I need pictures. But I listened to a bunch of these out of academic obligation, I guess, and they were pretty good. I don't love the format, but he's got the voice. He's so warm and steady. He's very good at differentiating between Clark and Superman. Clark is more awkward and like strange sounding, whereas Superman is like heroic, chest out, very cool sounding. Structurally, the plots are a little bit basic. The episodes just kind of like, how he got to Earth, what's Lois doing, here's the Daily Planet, here's crime, and then we go. It's foundational stuff, very blueprint storytelling. There are no moral gray zones. It's just kind of Superman good, bad guy bad, Superman save the day, and then end of story. Then we jump to the Fleischer cartoons. I think it's pronounced Fleischer.
Up in the sky, look! It's a bird! It's a plane! It's Superman!
These are fascinating, historically, and finally, I don't have to imagine anything anymore. That was so much effort. The showrunners had to give the studio they used animation lessons, which is kind of obvious. It's not great. It doesn't look fantastic. but it's very charming. The episodes are only 10 minutes, so they don't overstay their welcome. They're mythic and pulpy, and they're slightly unhinged in a very old sci-fi way. Every villain looks like just some guy or the weirdest alien you've ever seen. The most popular one is called The Mad Scientist, and I think that's my favorite too. Lois, independent investigative baddie from day one, goes undercover to check out some dude who is threatening a city with a electrothanasia ray, which sounds like something an 8-year-old made up. He gets kidnapped, obviously. Superman shows up. He punches a death ray. He saves the day. He physically throws the villain in jail, and it's very flamboyant. It's very theatrical. He's very much local god at this stage and not really a dude. Destruction Inc. Lois is also a baddie again. She goes undercover at a warehouse thing. She really does a lot of journalism while Clark just kind of fucks around. If I was 8 years old and this was the 60s and my very wealthy British parents had splashed out on one of the first only colour TVs on the street because they were invented in 67 and they didn't become widespread until the 70s, and I'm upper class in this scenario, and I'm sitting like 3 feet from the TV, this would go so unbelievably hard. It would be life-changing TV. Oh, it would be the best. Not everything has to be prestige drama. Sometimes you just want a big dude who punches a laser. That said, I think we do have to talk about some of the wartime ones, because they are rough. There's one I won't say, that I'm pretty sure the title is a slur. There's also 11th Hour and the Jungle Drums. Very much World War II propaganda. Very racist caricatures. Very much a product of its time in the worst way possible. It's a good reminder that superhero media in general is very, political. It always comes with some sort of agenda or messaging. I think this was the lowest point, though, historically. It doesn't really get worse than this. It's useful to acknowledge and then move on. Beyond that, Bud Collyer establishes a template. I think every Superman that comes after this is trying to do a Bud Collyer impression, whether they know it or not. He is the baseline. There is also the Adventures of Superman. He comes back for that. It's harmless, it's pleasant, forgetting about it immediately. Overall, though, he is historic and foundational. Very respectable guy. He's not my personal favorite. Sorry, bud, I need pictures. He is massively important to the overall lore of Superman. Without his voice, I don't think anything would have come after him. He's not the most human Superman, he's not very complex, and he's not very emotional, but he is the first time that Superman has been brought into the media outside of comics, and I think that counts for a lot. With deep respect of Mr. Bud, inventor of sounding trustworthy, I give him a 58. Which sounds low, but remember there are like a million Supermans. In the first era of Superman audios felt like invention, figuring out what a hero sounds like at all, then the next stretch feels more like maintenance. It's just a long line of very capable professionals stepping up to the plate, and they're doing a pretty okay job of it, which sounds harsher than I mean it to be. None of the performances are bad, which is kind of the problem. They're just fine. Fine is kind of death when you're following the voice that literally defined the character for decades. Fitzmaurice only held the cape for about a year in Adventures of Superman. He's seat-warming. Technically, he is totally solid. He's got clear diction and dependable authority. If you heard him out of context, you'd go, that's Superman enough. He sounds trustworthy. He sounds like he files his taxes early. He sounds like he saves cats in trees. But there is nothing distinctive about him. There is nothing that sticks. A big part of that is structural, not just vocal. The 1950 continuation of Adventures of Superman was just a lot of recycled material. A lot of the plots were just reworkings or repeats of earlier episodes. So you get this kind of deja vu effect where everything feels like it's happened already. The stakes feel smaller. The drama feels safer, even the danger feels procedural. Clark shows up, problem occurs, Superman fixes it, moral baseline restored. No real friction, and no emotional aftertaste. That is why, despite listening to so many of these episodes, I struggle to remember any of them. They're not bad, they're just forgettable, so I give Fitzmaurice a 44. Leonard Teal is fascinating for one reason. he's Australian, you would never know. There are no accent slips, there's no regional flavour. He is so impressive.
I'd like to be a reporter.
Oh, you'd like to be a reporter. What papers have you worked on?
Well, none, sir.
Oh, you haven't. But you think you'd be a success. Well, I'm afraid I can't use you, Kent.
You mean you haven't any openings?
Not for greenhorns.
There's something very uncanny about it. A Superman has been replaced by an Australian. Can't believe they've done this. The bigger issue here, again, is not Teal, it's the fact that there are so many episodes. It feels like the kind of backlog you'd only accumulate if no one had invented TV yet and radio writers were being paid by the mile. After a while, everything kind of blurs together. Competently made, totally listenable. When you consume this many stories back to back, you start to notice how similar the structures for everything is. Teal's Superman suffers the same thing as Fitzmaurice in that he sounds right and he acts right. He just never surprises you with anything. It's a professional radio drama. I'm gonna give him a 43. -1 point because he's Australian. Stuart Milligan, his take on Doomsday and Beyond and Superman on Trial immediately feels more modern. It's more character driven. It's less announcer reading copy. It is 2014 by this point, mind you. You actually believe that Clark Kent is a person rather than just like a public service mascot with this guy.
Rampage ends here. Metropolis is where I draw the line.
Doomsday and Beyond surprised me. I mean, I expected something stiff and dated. Instead, it's quite energetic and it's quite dramatic and very engaging. The pacing is tighter, the supporting cast feels like they have personalities, and the stakes feel emotional rather than just like purely procedural. Even Jimmy, who I was prepared to find so irritating, was weirdly okay. Milligan's Superman has a nice balance. He's strong without sounding pompous. He's kind without sounding naive. There's a lived-in quality to him that the earlier radio versions just kind of lacked. He sounds like someone who has been through things, which makes the heroism feel earned rather than just like assumed. It's not revolutionary, but it is the first time in this section where I'd found myself thinking that I'd happily listen to more of this. It doesn't feel like homework anymore, so I give him a 63. Audiobooks live and die on narration, and Mark Thompson absolutely carries it in all of All-Star Superman, which I totally didn't pirate. He is such a performer, and you can tell he respects the material. The plot, I am mixed on. It's very comic booky in that like high concept, slightly chaotic way. Big ideas, big swings. Occasionally it is at the expense of coherence, but as an experience it's very pleasant to listen to. So for all of that together, the plot is a mess, but for all of that together I would give him a 49. James Denton stars in the film version of All-Star Superman, and this one hurts so bad. Buried in this film is something genuinely amazing, but you have to excavate it. The core premise is fantastic. Superman is exposed to the sun. He's slowly dying and he's trying to put the world in order before that happens. It's very reflective and tender and mythic. Exactly the kind of story that I think suits this character. The Lois and Clark relationship here is so lovely. It's so soft and intimate, and it's two adults that actually know each other. Not just like archetypes flirting between explosions. It's very nice. The quieter scenes like really make up for the rest of it, I think. Unfortunately, everything around them is just like so much shit. There are maybe 15 plot lines fighting for attention at all times. You've got Luthor clones and death sentences, fortress robots, solar gods, serum powers, sun eaters and fake deaths and genetic formulas and philosophical revelations and symbolic sacrifices. Somebody has tried to adapt an entire comic run and refused to cut any of it out. The film ended up feeling very rushed and fragmented, less like a story and more like a highlight reel. Characters come in and they say something important and then they leave forever. Moments that should land emotionally get bulldozed by the next big spectacle that they put on, and that's so frustrating, because when it slows down and it lets Superman just like talk to Lois or something, It's so excellent. Superman in this is not like booming or grandiose. Denton's performance really sells that as well. He is very calm and he's very thoughtful, which fits a dying god trying to tidy up the universe. It's a very good, I really like it. There's a great movie in there trapped inside a very overstuffed one, with less plot and more breathing room. This could have been like so up there. So he gets a 42. He's not exactly how I picture Superman, but he's still a solid character. Most of the performances in this section kind of aim for correct rather than personal. It makes sense historically. Radio especially rewarded clarity and consistency, but it means we get fewer risks and there are not many bold interpretations of the character. When he is more human, I think you are reminded of how compelling the character can be when he is alive and a person. If you've watched any of my other videos, you know how much I love alive people. This era isn't the most exciting chapter, but I think it is important. Somewhere in the mid-60s, somebody looked at the most mythic, cosmic, gravity-defying character in American pop culture and went, what if we made a musical about it? And nobody disagreed with him. This is how we end up with Stage Superman, a theatrical, alternate universe where Superman solves problems by doing some choreography. It's very camp and it's very charming. It's deeply cursed and I kind of love that it exists. I hate it. I love it. I hate that it exists, but I love it. First problem, there is no proper recording of the original It's a Bird, It's a Plane, It's Superman starring Bob Holliday in 1966. There is one clip floating around and also a guy explaining the plot to me, so I have to judge this dude's entire Superman legacy based on one clip, which is like 12 pixels big. It feels unfair, but I guess it's historically accurate. The 1960s were probably just like that. I've never met anyone from the 60s who can see. Did you want preservation? Sorry, we just erased it for no fucking reason at all. Holliday himself, from the very little that I have, seems fine. He is agreeable. He is the human equivalent of like wholemeal bread. He's not bad, he's just very baseline. The musical itself though is where things get very weird and ketamine-y. Trying to summarize the plot feels like recounting a fever dream. Superman stops some bank robbers, standard. He also changes back to Clark, standard. Then this dude called Max gets mad because Superman is stealing his headlines and he decides the correct professional response is to ruin his life and expose his identity. Lois is aggressively into Superman, like she throws herself at him. The main plot is that there is a dangerous nuclear reactor at MIT that only Superman can fix, because apparently MIT security policy is just call the alien. He goes to fix it, it explodes, it was a trap, someone wants him dead. Lois accidentally leaks information about his origins, which is not very investigative journalism of her, but whatever. There's a bomb, there's a dedication ceremony, there is another explosion. Everybody turns on him because he didn't stop the explosion fast enough. Brainiac shows up, we finally remember that we're a Superman story. Lois gets kidnapped, Superman gets captured, then uncaptured, then he fights people. Then there's a missile, then he saves the day, and then it ends. It's like 7 comic issues duct taped together, and then forced to sing. The show is wildly outdated in ways that hit you like a chair. Sexism is everywhere. There is this one dude that is trying to constantly get inside Lois, and it gets to a point. There is casual racism, is very much a product of its time, in the least flattering way possible. It believes that you can solve nuclear sabotage with some tap dancing and skedaddling. There is something very wholesome about that optimism, even if the execution is just so wrong. Holliday doesn't transcend the material, but he doesn't really sink into it either. He's just kind of there. He's holding the cape, and he's doing his best, so I'm giving him 39. Do these numbers mean anything? Not really. Every grade is a passing grade. Wilson is in the 70s adaptation of this musical. It is watchable. Blessing and a curse. Now I can't pretend that it might have been better. This version feels like someone took the Broadway show and then filtered it through like unbelievable amounts of Molly, which means everything looks kind of beige and very sticky. And this Lois is unbearable. I tried. I really did. I went in open-minded. I wanted to be fair. But like, every time she appears, she's so annoying. It's not even like badly performed. It's just the writing makes her like permanently shrill and mean and exhausting, and every line is like dialed up to 11. She is the most irritating person ever. Wilson's Superman is not much better, if I'm honest. He's very smug. He's very much like, aren't I adorable all the fucking time? Clark works better, I think. When he tones it down and he plays like just awkward, it's fine, but Superman himself, I don't buy it. That is just a dude in tights. Credit where it's due. This version made me realize something. Maybe the musical just isn't good. Maybe it's not an adaptation problem. Maybe Superman fundamentally is not meant to stop mid-crisis and start singing. Shocking revelation, I know. 28. Gary Jackson, Cheyenne Jackson, and Craig Berry all played the same character, and they are all lost to time. I could not find a single clip. There is no footage, there is no slime tutorial, maybe they're a collective hallucination. For all I know, they could have been the greatest Superman of all time. Maybe they flew for real. Maybe they had laser powers and killed the entire theatre, and then the government covered it up, which is why I can't find anything. We will never know. It's tragic, but based purely on my experience with the rest of them, I'm gonna gamble, and I'm gonna say probably not my thing. I suspect nothing on earth can fix this musical for me. Some ideas are just fundamentally wrong. Edward Watts is in the Encore revival, and he looks like if Bill Pullman took the substance. The revival is technically better. There is cleaner staging and stronger voices, and it's more polished, I guess. Objectively, it beats the 1975 version. Everything beats the 1975 version. Ice Cube's War of the World beats the 1975 version. I don't like the musical. I think I've just accepted that. Material does not spark joy for me. Watts does everything right. He's very charming and capable and clearly talented, and I just don't want Superman jazz handing. So, through absolutely no fault of his own, he earns a 40. Before we continue, I need to state something clearly and with confidence. I am just a guy who doesn't like musicals. I used to when I was 14, but then I grew up. I'm kidding. You can like musicals and also be an adult. Live your truth, girl. I get a little intimidated by theatre kids, so I prefer you enjoy them all far away from me. Holy Musical Batman is a very specific internet era. It's less of a show and more like someone's very well-funded inside joke. It's a Star Kid parody, which already tells you the tone. If you know, you know. If you don't, imagine theatre kids with a surprising amount of production value and aggressive sincerity and a refusal to let a single joke die ever. I think Lauren Lopez still gets hounded about Draco Malfoy to this day. It's been 2 decades, let it go. Holy Musical Batman is technically one of the least Superman things ever, but it's also very entertaining. Before we get into Brian Holden specifically, we need to talk about the energy of this show, because the energy is doing a lot of heavy lifting. It opens with Batman watching his parents die in Crime Alley, very normal, very grim, and then immediately pivots into comedy musical. Commusical. Batman vows to stop crime forever, Gotham worships him, he hates everyone, he's emotionally constipated. It's all played at maximum melodrama, it's very good. Then he goes to receive the key to the city, and Superman shows up. Immediately, Superman upstages him, because Superman in this is a little bitch. The idea that Superman's presence is so bright and beloved that Batman, who runs purely on spite and trauma in this, just absolutely cannot cope is quite funny. From there, the plot becomes exactly the kind of throw everything at the wall parody structure you'd expect. Batman realizes he has no friends and he fires Alfred. Superman calls him out of pity. All the villains unionize. Robin shows up. There's a Facebook poll to decide if he lives or not. It's 2012, allow it. Barack Obama shows up. There's a musical fight. Superman spins the Earth backward for time travel like it's 1978 again. They form the Super Friends. It feels like it was written by people who genuinely love these characters and just wants to like poke them with a stick. And I get it, I love that. Parodies of Superman can easily turn into mean. This one just doesn't. It's very teasing, it's very exaggerating, but it never like hates him, which I think is important. Brian Holden, if we're honest, if we're judging strictly on how close to the definitive Superman archetype he is, he's not. Not even remotely. This is not Farm Boy God. This is not Mythic Americana. This is not Symbol of Hope. This is a big dork. He's a musical theatre dork. And I'd say that with love. He calls Batman because he feels bad, I think. He wants to hang out. He wants friends. He gets jealous of Robin. He pouts. He sings about his feelings. It's extremely not the traditional interpretation, but there's something very Clark about him. Even if Clark doesn't show up, he is very Clark. If you strip Superman back far enough, past like the iconography and the lasers and the statues and the god comparisons, Clark Kent is just kind of a dork. He is a very awkward Midwestern guy who wants people to like him. The dialogue is actually very funny, especially for 2012. There's a song fight between Batman and Superman that is possibly the campiest thing I've ever seen in my life, and I mean that as a compliment. It's so gay. The villains are silly and they are perfect in like a comic book way. The costumes are very DIY, but they look so good. It feels very product of its time, but this time I mean that affectionately. This time I want to go back. There's a lot of 2012 internet humor baked into it. A very Facebook humor, bit quirky, random millennial energy. We do have to be fair though, because this is still a ranking of Superman, and if I'm asking, you know, like, would he be the symbol for hope and humanity? Probably not. He's too unserious. He's a great character, he's just not the character. The plot, while fun, is a bit mid structurally. It's a sketch machine more than it is a story, but I still really like this one despite my dislike of musicals. I think I liked it more than several serious versions because at least it knows exactly what it is. It's not trying to be epic, it's not pretending to be high art. In a franchise that sometimes takes itself painfully seriously, a version that is just like pure joy feels quite refreshing. Brian Holden is not the ultimate Superman. He's not even close, sorry, but he is extremely watchable, which is all I'm really asking for at this point. So 40 for you, Brian Holden. I'm at a point in this project where my brain chemistry has started changing. Up until now, even the weird stuff, the radio serials, the musicals and all that like off-brand shit still had infrastructure. There are studios and budgets and networks. Fan films are different. Fan films are usually like 3 friends and a DSLR and the strongest emotional attachment to Superman you've ever seen in your life. There is something admirable about looking at one of the most expensive characters in pop culture and then going like, oh yeah, we can do that behind a Tesco. I'm not judging these to the same standards as studio productions. That would be insane. You would have to arrest me. If I started comparing a YouTube short to like a $200 million movie, kill me instantly. Instead, I'm grading on just like vibes, I guess. Did you convince me that you understand him a little bit? I'm not watching every fan film ever made. I would be here for centuries. These are the ones that I could actually find and then got through and then also remembered. Which leads us to 3 different flavors of homemade Superman. Superman Requiem, starring Martin Richardson, is aggressively British. Like I needed a break from the Yanks, so thank God. There's something extremely funny about Superman. This Kansas farm boy clearly wandering around what looks like some off-road in London. Grey skies, brick buildings, which I know you guys make your houses out of cardboard, so I guess that's an upgrade. Metropolis is not looking very Metropolis in this. We should start with the supporting cast, I think. Perry White looks like Alex Jones. This man is the angriest, most conspiracy podcast-looking Perry White I have ever seen. It's incredible. It's distracting, but it is incredible. Lex Luthor has negative charisma. which is a problem. I think Lex needs some level of charm. Even the bad Lexes usually have something like intelligence or snake oil salesman energy. We don't get any Lois either. We get Ali instead. At one point, Ali tells Clark that because he helped people before, everyone's now used to it, so he is obligated to keep helping forever. As for Richardson, great Clark. Really, like, solid Clark. Like, he nails, like, nerd loser Clark. Bit damp, looks like he says sorry a lot. Once the cape goes on, the presence just is not there. It feels like Clark playing dress up rather than transformation, and there's barely any fights. When action does happen, it's very like, we didn't have the budget for this, so just like imagine it. Which, I mean, okay, it's fine. It's a fan film. I'm not expecting like Avengers level VFX, but it makes the whole thing feel a bit small. Heart? Yes. Superman aura? No. No. 29. One-on-one with John Nagel is so cute. It's only 10 minutes, it's tiny. I mean, it's barely a Superman story, it's more like a character sketch. I think that works in its favor because instead of trying to stage like city-destroying fights with 12 quid and some out-of-work grad students, it just focuses on Clark and he's talking to someone, interview style, and it's very human and very normal. There is basically no Superman here, no suit. No big heroics, it's just Clark being Clark. He's asking questions and he's being gentle and he's listening. I think it makes for the most accurate Clark, maybe. He's endearing and he's soft and he's optimistic, slightly awkward in a sweet way. The acting is a bit mid in places, you can feel the indiness of it, but he's good. They've got the spirit. If I was ranking on who feels like the most Clark Kent guy you'd actually meet, this would be near the top, I think. But since there's basically zero Superman content to judge, I can't push him too high. Still, massive, huge respect for understanding that sometimes Superman stories don't need fights and deaths and shit, and actually making that premise good. Sometimes it's just a conversation. So this one gets a 35. I think what I've learned from these fan-made movies is that they get Clark right more often than the big budget movies do. They just don't have the resources to make the Superman side larger than life. Fan Supermen tend to nail the man and then struggle with the super. We are at day 200 of watching and thinking and reading and being Superman. This is the point where the dumb project, both the shows and this stupid fucking thing, begins to feel excessive. We are now in the late 80s to 90s television zone. I think this mostly exists because syndication needed cheap content to fill airtime. That context matters. You can feel it in everything. This era kind of tests the character, I think. If you strip Superman down to 20-minute episodes with villains called fucking, I don't know, Dr. Zap, is he still good? Is he still a good Superman? I don't know, we're gonna find out. Superman also has always been aimed at younger audiences, so thinking about that now, this feels like a waste of time. We're gonna group John Hames Newton and Jared Christopher together. They are both in Superboy, not Superman. It is very clearly an early prototype version of the same character. College-age Clark, same mythology, very low stakes. I ended up preferring the live action to the animated series. It feels very deliberate. It's slightly darker, slightly more ambitious. It wants to be a real drama and not just like disposable children's programming. Not that it succeeds, but oh well. It is very obviously low budget. Most locations look like warehouses or empty industrial spaces. Scenes are built around people standing still and talking because there is no money for movement or blocking, I guess. The lighting is flat. The action is very limited. The production constraints are constant and visible. I cannot tell you how many warehouses there are. Newton's take is competent but thin. He looks good in the suit. The costume fits, I guess. Good job, costume team. He carries himself like a traditional superhero, and visually it works very well. Performance-wise, there is much less to hold on to with him. Clark should have some awkwardness or softness. Newton plays him way too straight and way too confident. He comes off as generically cool, which kind of removes the contrast between Clark and Superman. Without that contrast, the character loses texture and he becomes a very standard leading man rather than, you know, Superman. Like, where is the dork? He is not Superman without a little bit of, like, dork loser. Bringing down the house is the most memorable episode in his run. It involves a rock star trying to buy an amusement park and then also falling in love with Lana and then building a torture device thing that he can torture her in. First of all, Lana is 17. And this dude has a receding hairline and a mortgage. The age dynamics are uncomfortable. The writing doesn't seem aware of it. Scenes that should feel tense or emotional also feel very stiff. Line deliveries are very flat. The show struggles to create any kind of urgency. Newton is not bad, so I'll give him a 35. I feel like that's fair. He never elevates the material and there is nothing distinct about his Clark or his Superboy. When Christopher takes over, the shift is immediate. I feel like he brings more personality and more energy and he's much more like the Clark in my head. His episodes attempt stranger ideas and larger concepts. Roads Not Taken is the clearest example. It's an alternative timeline story with like a dictator version of Clark. Lana and Luther are leading a resistance and there are actual moral stakes for once. For a syndicated superhero show with very limited resources, this is surprisingly ambitious. An authoritarian Clark kind of works because it clarifies what the normal version stands for. This episode kind of understands that, I think. It uses the premise to define the character rather than just creating spectacle. Christopher also feels very relaxed on screen. He reacts more and he moves more naturally like a human person. He also sounds less like he's reciting dialogue. He's not the ideal version of Clark Kent, but he is closer. At least in the sense of, like, interiority, I guess. The show is still very inconsistent by this point and still very cheap. With him, it becomes intermittently interesting instead of just functional. I will always take interesting over safe, so I'll give him a 49. And a push. There's also honorable mention of Ron Ely as an older parallel Earth Clark in, I want to say season 3. I don't like him. I'm gonna go through a few quickly because I realize I'm holding you hostage and it's been like a decade since this video started. Bob Hastings in The Adventures of Superboy delivers exactly what those 5-minute shorts require. The episodes are brief, the conflicts are basic, the morals are stated out loud, and there is no room for nuance or failure. The show moves too quickly to become irritating. Hastings plays Clark and Superboy with a fairly steady tone that fits like the educational kind of vibe I think they were going for. It's not ambitious television, but it is easy to sit through. A comfort viewing more than drama, so I'll give him a 42. Lenny Wainwright voicing Superman on Sesame Street. S for Superman is the thesis statement of the character, dude. This is what I'm talking about, man. It's educational. It's sincere. He teaches children the alphabet. That is the entire premise. This is a cleaner use of Superman than a lot of big budget projects manage. 50. Danny Darkin, Super Friends, I think has the opposite problem. The voice is strong and authoritative. He sounds correct immediately. The surrounding material is very weak. The plots are repetitive and simplified to the point of nonsense. The animation is janky at times, and Batman is cooler in this show. I feel a bit mean giving him anything lower than a 50 because it's still like, it's fine. Bo Weaver, no surprise, also a 50. He's in Superman, the 1988 Ruby Spears series. It sits just right in the middle. It's very standard late 80s Saturday morning TV. Clear morals, broad vision, very straightforward stakes. It's not trying to reinvent anything. Lois is written well. Clark is decent. It's very modest, but it is stable. That's like the Saturday morning era. None of it is prestigious in any way. Also quite forgettable. I will be forgetting them immediately after I finish this video. None of it changes the medium, but it keeps the character alive for new audiences. The concept survives cheap animation and toyetic plots and network notes. The durability matters, I think. After going through what must be hundreds of radio shows and shorts and games and minor appearances, I think the DC animated universe is the first time the character feels consistently handled well. Some of the movies are not very good, but I think the writing in general treats the mythology quite seriously. Tim Daly in Superman the Animated Series is where everything just kind of locks in. This was the first time in the entire project where I stopped writing excessive notes and started just like watching it. He is kind, but he is decisive. That balance, I think, is difficult, and he maintains it consistently. Like, it's pretty easy to play dark and tortured, or like silly and goofy, but I think the hard part is the balance between the two. Legacy Part 1 and 2, with Darkseid manipulating Superman and turning Earth against him, gives him very real emotional material. He handles anger without losing restraint, and even weaker side projects like Superman Brainiac Attacks, which, let's be real, was shit, did not damage his performance. It feels very complete and foundational, so I'll give it a 73. Coming after that, I think is pretty hard, but George Newbern he's solid. He takes over for Justice League and Justice League Unlimited, and he comes very close to matching Tim Daly. His approach is much firmer and more grounded. By this point, Superman is operating at a global scale within those shows. Episodes like Injustice for All, with Lex Luthor forming the Injustice Gang, shows a version of Superman who is strict but never, like, super mean. Newbern sells that moral clarity very well. He may not be immediately as charming as Daly, but he is very consistent across a very long run, so I give him a 60. Jerry O'Connell in The Death of Superman and The Reign of the Superman, I really liked them. I saw some pretty bad reviews, but I really liked them. Structurally, these adaptations do almost everything right. The Doomsday fight, the funeral, Lois investigating, the replacement Superman, the cyborg stuff. Story beats are very strong on paper. I think the issue is the center. O'Connell is competent, but unremarkable. He's kind of ordinary. There is no distinct texture or emotional gravity. There's very stiff animation, and the films never really reach the scale they aim for. They are solid, but they are immediately forgettable, so I give him a 48. I don't understand why Superman Red Son with Jason Isaacs gets dismissed so easily. Kal-El's rocket lands in Soviet Russia instead of Kansas. The most powerful being on Earth grows up inside a state system built on control and surveillance and ideology. You do not need complicated plotting when the hook is that clean. Isaacs plays him with restraint. The voice is very calm and deliberate and controlled. He has a very long track record of playing really good antagonists like Gortash and Baldur's Gate, and I think that experience shows here as well. The story runs through a set of political what-ifs. Stalin dies and Superman becomes the figurehead. Wars end through force and the Berlin Wall falls. Brainiac becomes an advisor instead of a conqueror. Batman turns into a terrorist and then kills himself. Lex Luthor is cast as this American prodigy, and he's also married to Lois. Ew, I know. I liked Lois here immediately. She's very sharp and skeptical, and she's never impressed by him. The marriage to Lex feels like it was intentionally put in to annoy me, but it's fine. It gives her a very defined position in the conflict instead of just like orbiting Superman, so I forgive it. Isaac's version is not heroic in the traditional sense. He is efficient and he solves problems and he eliminates instability, but he does it through oversight and fear. Crime drops because everyone is being watched. Nations comply because resistance is pointless. Judging him as Superman feels wrong. Morally, he is so off-center. As a character, though, he's very compelling. I think I admire the film more than I feel it, I guess. It is intellectually very interesting and thematically very solid, but it really hits hard on a human level. I respect it. I do not love it. So 48. Jack Quaid in My Adventures with Superman is so cool. This one feels like a reset after loads of darker takes and deconstructions and like, what if Superman was miserable? This show decides that he is a good person and then just moves forward from there. It focuses on early career Clark, first job, first saves, powers are still inconsistent, threats are local instead of cosmic. The smaller scale helps the show, I think. The stakes feel very personal. The core is the trio of Clark and Lois and Jimmy. They actually like each other, and none of them are irritating. I think making Lois Korean American adds a kind of texture without turning it into exposition. I like it when they do random tiny little things in different shows that don't really have any bearing on anything. I think it's cool. Jack Quaid's performance was quite surprising. If you only know him from The Boys, I think you expect a lot of darker stuff, a lot of cynicism. He goes in the complete other direction. His Clark is very earnest and openly emotional and awkward, and he is such a himbo. He also loves Lois, so perfect. He's great. He's a great Superman. Also, side note, I really like the animation style. I think it's very fun to watch. The tone runs on optimism. It's very, like, power and love and friendship will save the day. It's fine. I guess we need that. I think the Brainiac and Kara material proves that in My Adventures with Supergirl. Kara ends up with Jonathan and Martha in Smallville, and it's all very emotional first, and then spectacle second. The family beats land because the characters are written to care about each other without irony. Also, where is her waist? She is the tiniest waist person I've ever seen. Also, the soundtrack is very strong. And I haven't watched a bad Superman finale yet. They're all been very solid, or at least, consistent. If I had this at 12, I would have been locked in. Watching this now at my big age, it's still very fun, and I'm very engaged, which I think says enough, so I'll give him a 72. Kirk Allen in Superman, and also Ataman vs. Superman, is very fine. No one knows at this point. It's 1948. Nobody knows how a superhero movie is supposed to look. The war just ended. You forgive it, Everything feels very practical and provisional and assembled on the fly. The 1948 serial runs through the origin story for the 800th time. Krypton explodes, a baby lands on a farm, powers show up, Clark gets a job. I think the production assumes that the audience already knows the story or just doesn't care. There is no mythic framing or attempt to sell destiny, it's just plot logistics. Later adaptations, I think, treat the origin stories like this sacred text. Here it is just step one. Alan's performance is very stage trained, big movements and clean silhouettes, very deliberate posture. He clearly comes from a time where they're not quite used to the concept of movies yet. It's very stagey. He doesn't feel like a man pretending to be Superman though. He is just kind of is Superman, if you get me. The poses are iconic before iconic was even the goal. The basic visual language of the character locks in here almost by accident. Clark Kent is very different to Superman in this. He's very polite and differential. I think you know instantly which mode he's in. It's very binary acting, but it works for the format. The effects are almost endearingly bad. The flying is just bro just turns into an animation and then fucks off the screen, and I think it gets me every time. It's so funny. You're watching these people solve an impossible problem with whatever they have, and I think, you know what, I'll allow it. The Ataman vs. Superman leans harder into pulp sci-fi nonsense. This is where Lex Luthor really enters the picture. I think the tone gets a lot louder and stranger. The science is just it's so casual. There are disintegrators and teleportation devices and synthetic kryptonite built from a list of radioactive buzzwords. Evil machine is enough. There's a very cinematic rhythm to all of it, all of Superman. It follows danger appears and then civilians panic. Superman arrives from above and problem is solved through strength and decisiveness. I think the structure becomes the blueprint for decades. Alan is not the most charismatic or emotionally rich Superman. I don't think he's meant to be. I don't think you watch this because it's fantastic. He provides the first live action template that the rest of the genre copies. It's not great, but it is a 55. If Alan is the experiment, I think Reeves is the standardization. He's very routine, weekly episodes and all that. He shows up at the same time every week and then he fixes things. I think that repetition does a lot more for the mythology than big budget spectacles do. The structure of George Reeves' episodes are very simple. Lois and Jimmy investigate something that they shouldn't. Criminals grab them. Clark disappears and Superman appears. Resolution, credits, next episode. There's not a lot of long-term consequences. The world restores itself after every episode is very nice. It feels very thin from a modern perspective. I think if you tried to do that now, your show would be cancelled immediately. The tone is very sincere though. Everyone delivers dialogue like they're on the radio. I don't know when the transatlantic accent started and ended, but there are remnants of it here. Criminals are obvious. Motives are very simple. The line between good and bad are absolute. The black and white seasons have more texture than I expected. The lighting sometimes dips into something closer to noir. There are very dark alleys and warehouses and darker storylines to accommodate. When the show switches to colour, everything softens. There are brighter sets. It's very much safer. The danger level drops and the world becomes sort of suburban, there is a noticeable tonal shift. Reeves himself, I think, is the key to why the show works at all. He doesn't play Superman as alien or godlike, he plays him as a solid, grounded, practical guy. He has a very dependable presence that reads as trustworthy. He's not very mythic savior, he's more like the most competent adult in the room. When he shows up, the situation is just handled. I like the pilot the most. They run through the basic origins again. Krypton, baby and shit, these random people called Eben and Sarah find him. Who are Eben and Sarah? I don't know, they're not my Kents. There are higher concept episodes like Panic in the Sky, which is the most popular one. It's a very big idea, but it's a modest execution. In my opinion, the show is not built for spectacle or tight plotting. At one point, this asteroid that Superman fires back into the sky gives him amnesia, and then the asteroid comes back, and everyone's like, where is Superman? But Superman doesn't remember that he's Superman. Like, don't put complex topics into my dumb show. We know he's Superman, just let him fix the rock. It's not sophisticated and it's not really daring, but it is hugely influential, and I think it turns the character into folklore, so I'll give him a 60. Now at this point, I have to confess, I left a few out. I originally scripted them, but it was stuff like the Batman black and white motion comics, you know, stuff he wasn't really in for long enough to warrant a score. I left a list in the description if you want to know what I did leave out. They probably weren't very high scores because he wasn't in it enough. Anyway, you might be thinking, you know, Thea, what the fuck is wrong with you? Don't you have a life, hobbies, friends? And to that I say, when you picture Superman, who do you picture? Yeah, Reeve, thought so. Most people picture Christopher Reeve. He's like the guy. He is not one interpretation among many. He is the interpretation. I think it is the image that the rest of the adaptations kind of base themselves off or push against. It's difficult to overstate how much of the modern character is defined here. I'm judging based off the first Superman, by the way. I'm not mean enough to judge off of the third. The film opens with the destruction of Krypton, Kal-El's arrival on Earth, and his adoption by Jonathan and Martha Kent, the real Kents. As a teenager, he begins to discover his purpose after Jonathan's death, and he eventually travels to Metropolis, and he starts working at the Daily Planet alongside Lois and Jimmy. His public debut happens when he saves Lois from a falling helicopter, which leads to the rooftop interview, which I love that scene. I think it's great. Lex Luthor plans to redirect a missile that will then trigger a massive earthquake, and it will destroy the West Coast and increase the value of land that he secretly owns. Superman stops one missile, but then he fails to prevent the second one. The earthquake then traps Lois, and she dies. Superman breaks Jor-El's rule about interfering with human history. He reverses the Earth's rotation and travels back in time, and he saves her. Bare minimum, I know. The basic outline is so strange, but I think it's great. The first hour is slower than I originally remember. A lot of time is spent establishing Krypton and Smallville and the mythology around Superman's purpose. At the time, I think this might have been necessary. This is like the first introduction for many people of Superman, so you know, they have to like lay down the basics. Reeves' performance is the reason that it works. The key to his entire portrayal is how completely he separates Clark Kent from Superman. It's not just the glasses, it's the posture and the voice and the eye contact and even like the rhythm of how he moves through a room. Clark is very drawn in and he hesitates and his voice is softer and slightly awkward. He avoids direct attention. Superman is very upright. He speaks with confidence and occupies space like he belongs at the center of this frame. I think the transition between these two identities is so smooth that you instantly understand the disguise without the movie needing to explain it. I think that dual performance also became the template for decades. Clark is so endearing to me in this movie. He is such a dork. The clumsiness about him never feels fake or manipulative. It feels like someone deliberately making himself smaller so that the real version of him can exist safely. And then when Superman appears, the tone shifts completely. I think the rooftop interview with Lois remains one of the most memorable scenes in the entire franchise. It's very playful and romantic and relaxed. Also, Lois says this line,
You're gonna end up fighting every elected official in this country.
timeless. It's timeless. Reeves' Superman is confident without arrogance and charming without sounding rehearsed. The chemistry with Margot Kidder is a huge part of why all of it really works. Her Lois is fast-talking and curious and very funny. You can see why she becomes the blueprint for later versions. I think the movie also understands that Superman should be impressive but also approachable. Reeve never plays him like a distant god. He plays him like someone who genuinely enjoys helping people. There are some awkward line deliveries from other characters. The delivery of this line,
What the hell happened? We got our engine back? What the hell's going on out there?
Fly. Don't look, just fly. We got something. I ain't saying what it is. Just trust me.
possibly the worst delivery of a line I've ever seen. The villains are very camp in this. Gene Hackman plays Lex Luthor as theatrical and sarcastic and extremely smug.
Do you know why the number 200 is so vitally descriptive to both you and me? It's your weight and my IQ. Now think, people, think!
It's a very different interpretations to the character compared to the colder and darker versions that appear later, but it fits the slightly heightened tone of the film, I think. Young Clark is played by Jeff East, and he plays him very well, I think. He's at the stage where the character is slightly unusual. He's an outsider before he even understands why. I think it helps bridge the gap between the Smallville portion of the story and the Metropolis version that we eventually see. The later sequels are strange in a bad way. Superman 2 introduces General Zod, and the conflict between Clark's desire for a normal life and his responsibilities of Superman are like a big thing. Superman 3 leans heavily into comedy, but I don't know if that was intentional. I remember him saying one line like a surfer dude when he takes Lois to the Fortress of Solitude, and he goes, No. The first film remains, I think, the clearest expression of what this version of the character is supposed to be. Reeves defines the balance between kindness and strength and awkwardness and confidence that the character still relies on today. What a phenomenal actor, dude. He was so underrated. I think you can argue about which modern actor does the role best, but almost every single one of them is responding to this performance, so I'm giving him a 78. Or actually an 80. My scores add up to 78, but he can have 80. There is a Bangladeshi or Bangla version of this movie. Very low budget reinterpretation of the 1978 film with Danny Sidak. The core structure is similar, the production scale is dramatically smaller, the effects are simple, and the editing is rough. A lot of scenes rely on creative camera work rather than visual effects to sell the illusion. The tone kind of ends up feeling very close to TV sci-fi, like old Doctor Who. The ambition is clearly there, but the resources are not. Doesn't mean I don't like it though. The story also changes some key details. Krypton still exists, and Superman's parents are alive but imprisoned by Zod. Instead of being sent to Earth purely for survival, he's placed there to develop and understand his abilities before returning. Lois is also a baddie in this. I really like her. She's so cool. If you're gonna watch it, do it for her. Also, obviously, there are musical numbers. The tone is significantly different to the Western version. It creates a very different rhythm. Nothing is overly serious. Dramatic scenes suddenly transition into song. Also, you know he's coming. You know Superman is coming because the soundtrack tells you. Which, I mean, why didn't we do that? Despite the limitations, there's something very interesting about how committed the film is to adapting the character within its own filmmaking tradition. With a larger budget and tighter pacing, I think it could have worked much better, so I have to give him 35/40. Another low-budget reinterpretation of the character is produced in the style of Indian cinema. The contrast between the costume in this one and the rest of the production is very noticeable. They clearly put all of the budget into the costumes. The sets and effects and the action sequences are much simpler. It's still entertaining as a curiosity piece. I think the film approaches the character through conventions of its own industry rather than just trying to copy Hollywood. Esau adds a very distinct tone. He gives the adaptation his own identity, even with the limitations of production. It's not a polished version of the character. I don't have a score for it, but it's interesting to see how widely the Superman concept traveled and how differently it could be interpreted depending on the filmmaking culture. Dean Cain in Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman, it makes its priorities extremely clear from the title alone. The focus is not really Superman, it is just Lois and Clark. The show treats the superhero side as secondary to the workplace romantic comedy happening at the Daily Planet. Tonally, it sits somewhere between a superhero show and a 90s sitcom. A lot of the rhythm feels closer to something like Seinfeld than a traditional comic book story. Like, it's very Seinfeld. Episodes revolve around misunderstandings and office dynamics, and relationship tension more than spectacle. When action shows up, it often feels like an interruption to the main story rather than the driving force. I think the core idea is that Clark is the real identity and Superman is the disguise. Like, Clark gets all the emotional development and the insecurities and the romantic tension, and Superman is just the job. Sometimes that works. It's very grounding. It gives the characters a very consistent point of view, I guess. The show is also very locked into 90s TV pacing. Nothing is terrible, but nothing stands out either. It's very mid. It's consistently watchable, but without being really memorable. The episode Church of Metropolis is a very good example of the formula. A criminal group begins expanding its influence across the city, while Lois becomes jealous of an investigator showing interest in Clark. The episode splits its time between the gang storyline and the romantic tension.
Anything you say can and will be used against you. In a court of law. You have the right to an attorney. You cannot afford an attorney. One will be provided for you.
The crime plot is functional but not particularly inventive. I think Lois, in general, works extremely well. Clark, less so. Terry Hatcher's Lois is very sharp and ambitious and confident and consistently engaging to watch. She carries a lot of the show's energy. Her presence fits the faster dialogue style and the romantic tension that the series relies on. Clark feels very off-model in several ways. The performance leans into slightly smug and overly polished. It never quite lands as sincere. He's not a very dorky loser in this, which I think is my main problem. He just sometimes feels like he wandered in from a different show. It makes the romantic dynamic very uneven. Lois feels authentic to the world of the show, and Clark sometimes feels like an imitation of the character rather than a convincing version of him. There are still some things that the show gets right. In the pilot, there is a scene where Martha and Clark try to find a costume for him. I really liked that part. It's very grounding. Lex Luthor in this has a full head of hair. Somebody give him a razor. I do not like it. I think it's so why did they choose to do that? I think that's so wrong. Get rid. Overall, the show is very easy to watch, but it's not really like essential to the lore. It works fine as background TV, but I don't think you should invest any time into it. I spent weeks of my life watching this shit and it just was not worth it. Especially when I found out that Dean Cain is an asshole in real life. It kind of soured everything. The tone of the performance and the structure never quite elevate it beyond average, so I'm gonna give it a 50. I think Justin Hartley in Injustice is one of the darkest alternate takes of any of them, really. The basic premise is very brutal. Superman is tricked by the Joker into killing a pregnant Lois Lane while she is under the influence of this fear toxin thing. It also detonates a nuclear weapon and destroys Metropolis. The trauma pushes Superman into establishing this global authoritarian regime in the name of peace. Very depressing. The movie moves very quickly through early tragedy. The Lois sequence is brutal but also very compressed. It doesn't spend much time exploring the aftermath emotionally, I think. The pacing is a recurring issue. The story covers an enormous amount of material but rarely slows down long enough to let events breathe. I think Hartley's voice is very good. He's got a lot of emotional restraint. I think it fits the idea of someone trying to justify very extreme decisions. The performance carries the shift from grieving hero to authoritarian ruler in a very believable way. The villains get a ton of points for how absolutely batshit insane their plan is. Like, I think that's the worst one we've had. Lois's absence is also felt very strongly throughout the film. The emotional core that stabilizes Superman disappears early, and the story has to rely on ideological conflict instead. Despite a lot of the issues, the film is still very engaging. The action sequences are solid and the premise is compelling. It's far from the worst adaptation of the character. He's not really Superman though, is he, if he's doing all that? But then again, he loves Lois enough to do all that, so maybe it cancels out. I'll give him a 40. I came on to Adam Baldwin in Superman Doomsday like very late. I found it a day ago. Doomsday kills Superman. Sorry. Spoilers. It condenses the original arc very heavily. I think the battle between Doomsday and Superman is very brutal compared to like earlier animated versions of the character. Superman eventually defeats the creature thing, but he dies from the damage shortly afterwards. Metropolis falls into chaos without him, and the supporting cast struggles to process what happened. Lex Luthor secretly creates a clone replacement as well. I think Adam Baldwin fits the material very well. His voice has a lot of weight and authority that the role needs, especially during the early Doomsday battle. He sounds very confident and steady without drifting into like exaggerated heroics. Again, it's a DC animated film, so I like the animation. I think it was very okayly written. It's not especially distinctive, but like the core ideas from the comic run are there. It's competent, it's occasionally strong, but it is not definitive. And it's also not really Superman, is it? It's a clone. Do I give 0 points just for that? I'll give him 38. That's what it adds up to. Superman Returns is one of the stranger entries into this whole thing. It's not really trying to reinvent anything. It's a continuation of something that happened decades earlier. Director Bryan Singer, essentially treats the film as a spiritual follow-up to the 1978 version, especially Superman and Superman 2, specifically the Donner cut. The tone and the visual style and the musical cues, even the characterization of Clark Kent all feel very deliberately modeled after Christopher Reeve's version. It's both a sequel and a tribute in that sense. The story begins with Superman returning to Earth after being gone for 5 years. He left to investigate the possibility of other Kryptonians and he found nothing. So he comes back to Metropolis expecting to just like step into his old life. Things are very different though. The world has moved on without him. Lois Lane has won a Pulitzer Prize for an article titled "Why the World Doesn't Need Superman." She's also engaged to another man and raising a kid. I mean, is it important to the plot? Not really. Lex Luthor has been released from prison because Superman wasn't there to testify against him. He manipulates an old woman into marrying him, and then when she dies, he gets all of her money. Lex in this is very opportunistic and very patient and extremely comfortable with exploiting people, and he is so bold. Superman's return to heroics begins when an accident occurs during a test flight. Lois happens to be on board, so obviously he's gonna go save her. He saves everyone on board, and then people clap for him. It's very basic. Kind of works though because of the scale. The tension builds slowly as the situation deteriorates, and when Superman finally appears, the reaction from the crowd feels genuinely overwhelmed. For once, the people in the movie respond the way you would expect people to respond. Like, he's an indestructible man flying through the sky. People are shocked. Everybody is thrilled that Superman has returned, but Clark feels very disconnected. 5 years is a very long time. The relationships he had before did not pause while he was gone. The emotional distance kind of becomes the central theme of the movie. Superman has always been slightly separate from humanity, but I think this separation is emphasized much more strongly in this movie. He watches the world from above, and he listens to voices across the planet, and he tries to help where he can, but he doesn't fully belong in that kind of life. Brandon Routh's performance leans very heavily into this isolation. I don't know if it's Routh or Routh. Forgive me. Visually, he resembles Christopher Reeve so strongly that it feels very uncanny at times. He's like a stretched out version of him. The glasses and the posture and the smile as Clark Kent are all very Reeve, but there's a very different tone underneath, I think. I think Ruth's Clark feels more naturally awkward, as if like this disguise has gradually become a part of him. He's just a very silly guy. I like him. He fumbles conversations and he avoids eye contact and he tries not to draw attention to himself. But I think this Clark knows that he missed something very important in the 5 years that he was gone, so it's a little more sad. I think when he appears as Superman, it still works, even if he is a little bit awkward. The switch between the two of them aren't as dramatic as Reeves was. That and some of the lighting choices make him look very non-human. I think that was a really good move. He feels slightly more alien than the other versions do, but I think that fits the story. Like, he's not integrated into human life anymore, he is very much outside of it. After gaining control of the crystals from the Fortress of Solitude, Lex starts experimenting with their ability to create these massive crystal land formations. His goal is to create a new land so he can basically just kill a bunch of people and have a bunch of land. There's the same theatrical kind of arrogance and sarcastic humor, though I think Spacey's version is slightly darker and more bitter. Maybe he's drawing from real life experiences, we'll never know. I think his dialogue feels overly theatrical at times. There are parts of the movie that are trying so hard to replicate the earlier films. Some of the lines land well, but most of it feels quite exaggerated. Lois begins investigating Lex's activities and eventually discovers the truth about his plans. This leads to one of the film's central complications, but also kind of not really. Lois's son. The kid initially appears to belong to her fiancé, James Marsden. I can't remember his name in the movie. He was so boring. He's portrayed fairly sympathetically. He's not like a villain, and he's not manipulative. He's just he's a fairly decent man who genuinely cares about Lois and their son. But I also kind of hate him for this bit.
Tell the truth now. Were you smoking?
Get off her back, dude. What a fucking loser. I hate him for that. So Superman isn't like stepping in to replace anyone that bad. He's returning to a life where someone else has already taken on the role that he left behind. Eventually the story reveals, or implies actually, that Lois's son is actually Superman's. I think the revelation is supposed to soften the whole homewrecker tension that there might have been, but I don't know, that's such a stupid plot. I fucking hate that, it's so dumb. Clark spends a lot of the film observing, like stalking her, flying about outside her house, watching her family from a distance. It reinforces the idea that Superman's greatest struggle here is figuring out whether he still has a place in the world he left. Lex successfully grows his big massive crystal continent. The formation is infused with kryptonite, making it very dangerous for Superman. Obviously, when Superman does approach, Lex and his henchmen beat the shit out of him. One of his henchmen is Cutner from House. He's stabbed, he's beaten, he's weakened, he's nearly killed before Lois and Richard come to get him. Lois and her fiancé risk their life to save him, and later the military and the public also assist indirectly in helping him to stop the disaster. It reinforces this long-standing tradition in superhero stories where the people he protects also protect him, and also I just really like that scene. I think it's great. The final act involves Superman lifting this massive kryptonite-infused landmass into space. By the time he succeeds, he's almost dead. He crashes back to Earth and falls into a coma in the hospital and leaves the world uncertain whether he'll recover. He recovers. Sorry, spoilers, but he recovers. The closing scenes return to the central relationship between Superman and Lois. He promises that he'll always be around, even if he can't share a normal life with her. Superman Returns reflects a lot of like mid-2000s stylistic choices, I think. There are frequent fade transitions and slow camera movements and a very heavy reliance on digital environments. It probably was impressive at the time. Not so much now. I think the flying sequences hold up very well. They avoid very obvious green screens. When Superman does move through the sky, it looks relatively convincing, although he does look a bit like an Auton from Doctor Who in some scenes. There are very cool images throughout. The cinematography is pretty good, I think. There are shots of Superman hovering above the Earth and listening to the voices, and it's a very strong visual representation of his connection to humanity. The soundtrack is kind of mid. It's kind of forgettable. I think one of the recurring weaknesses is that, and also the pacing. The opening acts move very slowly. I can kind of appreciate the reflective tone, but like it gets a bit much at points. That movie is too long. I think the movie's strengths appear in individual moments rather than like the overall narrative flow. Scenes like the airplane rescue and the confrontation on Lex's yacht. The moment when Richard is holding Lois and their kid and they're like drowning and it's very like slow zoom out shot. I really like that part. I thought it was really good. And then Superman appears. I love it. Superman Returns is a film caught between eras, I think. It's trying to honour classic Superman films while existing in a landscape that was about to change dramatically with the rise of like modern superhero films. It feels very nostalgic. I feel like it might have felt that way even for the moment it was released. Brandon Routh's performance remains one of the most interesting parts of the movie. He captures the physical presence of Superman convincingly and brings a very gentle sincerity to the role. His version of Clark Kent is awkward and lonely and hopeful, which I think fits the film's themes of absence and return. Also, I love Brandon Routh. I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but I love him. So even though there were a good few issues with it, his face makes up for it. The movie is not perfect. Pacing is uneven, the dialogue is awkward. Lex's storyline kind of slips into melodrama sometimes. It also contains very strong sequences and a very clear affection for the character's history. He's a great Superman. I think he's one of my favorites. I'll give him a 60. Superman and Lois went by very quickly for me. It's easily the fastest watch of the entire project. Not that it wasn't a million hours long, but it was great. It sped by. Part of it is that it was very watchable. The tone is very consistent, the characters are grounded, and it never feels like it's wasting time. The general premise of the show is that Clark and Lois are already established heroes and journalists, and now they have to learn how to be parents. They're raising 2 teenage sons while also dealing with the usual threats that comes with being Superman. The idea alone makes the show feel different from basically every other adaptation we've looked at. Clark has already figured himself out, and now he has to figure out how to be a dad. Immediately, this version of Clark is perfect. I love him. I think he's great. Hoechlin leans very heavily into like the dorky weird side of the character, I think, even if it's not completely obvious at first. He's such a nerd. He's very obviously such a nerd. He's also very devoted to Lois. This might be the most openly affectionate Clark we've seen on screen. The show does not treat their relationship as something that needs constant tension or conflict to stay interesting. It shows them as a very solid couple who obviously love each other. Clark supports Lois in basically every situation she goes through. He is always there. That dynamic, I think, becomes the emotional center of the show. The superhero elements are important, but the relationship between Clark and Lois takes priority most of the time. Their chemistry is one of the strongest parts of the series. I think the parenting angle is where a lot of the drama comes from. The sons are dealing with their own identities and expectations and pressures. One of them inherits powers, which adds another layer of difficulty, and then the other one inherits powers, so there's even more. Clark has to guide them through something that only he understands. I think this approach makes the show feel very grounded. Even when the plot involves superpowered villains or large-scale threats, the emotional stakes usually come back to the family. There is very little arrogance or spectacle in how Hoechlin represents the character. He's very calm and he's very patient and reassuring. He talks to people instead of intimidating them. When he shows up to help someone, the emphasis is on the comfort he provides rather than the power that he displays. At the same time, the show does not forget how extremely powerful he is. When the action scenes happen, they are taken so seriously and they're very cool. In my opinion, Season 1 is the strongest overall. It introduces the family dynamic and establishes the tone and balances the personal drama with the superhero story very well. Everything feels very fresh and focused, and the writing understands what makes this version of Superman very distinct. I think Season 2 is weaker by comparison. It was kind of disappointing. Some of the plot lines are very complicated. The pacing is way less consistent as well. It's still enjoyable, but like the clarity of the initial concepts is not always there. I think throughout the entire series though, the emotional tone does stay consistent. The show is about family and loyalty and responsibility, and Clark is defined by how much he cares about the people around him. The final episode did not make me cry. It takes a very unique approach to this kind of superhero story, I think. Instead of ending with like another massive battle or a dramatic sacrifice, it chooses to show the characters living full lives. The Kents eventually defeat their enemies and move forwards. The story follows them into the future. Lois grows older and eventually dies. Clark stays with her through everything. After she passes away, he also eventually follows, but not before getting a dog. The show presents this as a natural conclusion rather than a tragedy. It's such a calm and very sincere ending, and it's just perfect. There is no attempt to shock the audience or set up a continuation. I think the narrative closes all of its arcs. I don't think that anything is left unresolved. I know it's the bare minimum, but whatever, take what I can get. Hoechlin might be the most Clark Kent out of all of the Clarks. He's so awkward and sincere, and he's very kind. He feels very comfortable in the identity of Clark Kent, which I think some other portrayals don't really reach. The show as a whole captures something very crucial about the character though. Superman is often described as an ideal, but he is also a husband and a father in this. The story treats those roles with the same importance as saving the world. The result is a version of the character that feels very human without losing the qualities that make Superman feel unique. For that, I'll give him a 78. We gotta talk about Henry Cavill. I think he's possibly the most well-known Superman, right? He plays Superman across several films in the DCEU. Man of Steel is the starting point for Cavill's Superman. The film spends so much time establishing Krypton and Clark's origin before he even becomes Superman. The opening sequence takes place on Krypton. The planet is collapsing and its core has been destabilized through resource extraction. In this, children are engineered for very specific roles, but Jor-El and Lara have one of the first naturally born children. Jor-El then plans to send them to Earth with some DNA codex stuff written into him, but General Zod launches a coup, and then Jor-El is killed while trying to protect the codex. Kal-El does get launched into space though. Also, Vanessa is in this. I love Vanessa. She's the best. I don't know her real name, but she's the best part of the movie. The movie then jumps through Clark's life through flashbacks. He grows up in Kansas with Jonathan and Martha Kent, one of the only things they got right in the movie. His Kryptonian biology gives him abilities that make him fundamentally different from everybody else. Jonathan spends so much time warning Clark not to show anyone these abilities because people will fear what they do not understand. One of the defining moments of the movie is a tornado killing Jonathan. Something that Clark easily could have saved him from, but for the sake of continuity, I guess, they let him die. As an adult, Clark travels around the world doing different jobs and keeping a low profile. Lois Lane eventually enters the story. She investigates a Kryptonian scout ship, and Clark sneaks into the ship and activates its AI. The AI explains his origins. I don't know why they don't have two-factor authentication on that shit. Lewis accidentally triggers the ship's defense, and then Clark reveals his powers to save her. Also, just not a very good ship if anybody can walk in. Zod returns. His goal is to rebuild Krypton by transforming Earth and using the codex in Clark's body to recreate Kryptonian civilization. The central conflict, I think, is Clark choosing between Krypton and Earth. Zod views Clark as a traitor and Clark prefers Earth. Zod activates the world engine, which fucks up Earth for a bit, and his forces are eventually sent back to the Phantom Zone. Zod confronts Clark in a fight across Metropolis. The destruction in this sequence is massive. The film very much prioritizes spectacle over restraint. The fight ends in a very controversial moment where Clark has to kill Zod to stop him from attacking people. I think this decision defines the tone of the entire movie. Superman is forced to cross a line that previous film versions just kind of avoided for the most part. I'm not sure if people liked that. I don't think it was a great idea. By the end of the movie, Clark is working at Daily Planet, and the government allows Superman to operate independently, but they're very wary of him. This version of Superman is defined by uncertainty. He is powerful, but unsure how he should exist in the world. The film spends a lot of time examining fear and consequence rather than hope and optimism. And visually, the movie focuses very heavily on scale. The flying scenes are impressive. The combat between the Kryptonians feels extremely powerful. The Dick spaceships are interesting. At the same time, the tone is very serious, and sometimes that leads to it being quite emotionally distant. One of the constant criticisms I've seen is that it does prioritize spectacle over warmth. The story spends so much time on destruction and conflict while giving less attention to like the everyday humanity. I saw a tweet about how he saves people like a cop, and I mean, that's just bang on. He's so stiff, it's weird. Physically though, he fits the role very well. The main limitation is that the script does not give him any moments of personality. His Superman is quiet and restrained for most of the film. Batman v Superman is interesting, and by interesting, I mean bad. Bruce Wayne views Superman as like a threat after witnessing the destruction of Metropolis. From his perspective, Superman represents unchecked power. If someone that strong ever turned against humanity, there is no defense. At the same time, Lex Luthor in this is manipulating events. He pushes both heroes towards confrontation while conducting his own experiments. Superman spends so much of the movie dealing with political and moral scrutiny. Governments debate whether or not he should be controlled. Media outlets question his actions. The tone is very focused on accountability and fear. Eventually, Batman and Superman fight. The confrontation ends when Batman realizes that actually he's not that bad. They join forces against Doomsday, which Luthor created, and then Superman sacrifices himself, which is like the emotional climax of the movie. But I didn't really care. Like, whatever, man, he's dead. Next movie. I did watch both Justice League, the Snyder Cut, and the original Justice League. No, the extra time does not help. There is no difference between them, and film bros were telling me that the Snyder Cut was better. That was a waste of my time. Thanks, guys. Batman and Diana Prince form a team of heroes to face a new threat. We have Cyborg and Aquaman and the Flash. Eventually, the group decides that they need Superman, so they find a way, unfortunately, to bring him back. They use some technology to revive him, and then when he returns, he's confused and aggressive. He eventually stabilizes, but not before fighting with everyone, and then he helps the team stop the invasion of Earth. Superman's role in this film is very functional. He's not really a person. He appears near the end and helps resolve the final conflict. That's kind of it. Cavill was also briefly in Black Adam. He appears at the end to confront Teth Adam and warn him about his actions. It's a very short scene. The appearance was significant, I think, at the time, because it implied that Cavill would come back and be Superman, but that ended up being his final appearance. My god. But also, since Black Adam was really shit, it was kind of a relief to see him. It was possibly my favorite time to see him ever. Maybe he was at his best in the 6 seconds of screen time that he had. I was really glad to see him. Overall, Cavill's Superman is defined by very, seriousness. The films emphasize moral ambiguity and global consequences, and the fear that people might feel towards something with unlimited power. After watching so many Supermen, I think it becomes clear that they need, a little bit of humanity and optimism. It works best that way. A certain amount of earnestness helps the character feel very distinct. This version of him moves so far in the opposite direction. I don't think he's a hero in any of these. I'd say anti-hero at best. The dark tone makes him feel so distant. I don't think Cavill is the main issue. I don't like him for reasons I just don't like him. It's whatever. I'm not gonna watch any of the other movies that he's in. He fits the physical image of Superman really well, and when the films allow him moments of calm or what Snyder thinks is empathy, he handles them effectively. In comparison to some other portrayals, this Superman feels very much like an outsider. It lands somewhere in the middle, I think. It's not the worst interpretation, but it does not capture the warmth and the balance that many of the stronger versions have, so I'll have to give him 48. I feel kind of bad for that. Cooper Timline and Dylan Sprayberry were young Clark in Man of Steel. Those scenes focus on Clark learning how to manage his performance while also trying to behave like a normal child. The performances are very solid. Especially for child actors, I think they did a pretty good job. The actors handled the emotional moments very well, especially the scenes where Clark struggles to handle the responsibility that has been placed on him. They provide a very good foundation for the adult version of Clark. I think those scenes help explain why he is the way that he is. I don't have a score for them. I think they did a pretty good job. We are at David. We are in 2025. I feel like this was a long time coming. This is the newest live-action Superman. It came out in like July last year, I think. It's the first movie in the rebooted DC universe, if you don't count Peacemaker. By the time this version appears, he is already established, so we don't spend any time on like backstory or origin or Krypton or any of that. Clark is already Superman. He already works at the Daily Planet. He's already fucking Lois. The world already knows who he is. The film opens with an international conflict. Superman stops the nation of Baravia from invading Jaranpur. The intervention prevents a war, but it immediately raises political and ethical questions. Governments are uncomfortable with the idea of one person being able to control the outcome of stuff like this. This sets up one of the central ideas in the movie. Even when Superman is trying to help, his actions have global consequences. For the first time in this series, Superman is also defeated very early in the movie. The Hammer of Baravia manages to defeat him. This establishes that this version of Superman is not invincible, and he goes to recover in the Fortress of Solitude. When he returns, Lex has made Ultraman, a powerful clone that is designed to rival Superman. Which, really silly dumb name in hindsight. I think that was so stupid. Ultraman defeats him again, so maybe I shouldn't be hating on him. It further damages Superman's reputation. Lois Lane then interviews Superman. The interview becomes a debate about the Baravia situation. Lois questions whether Superman has the right to interfere with international politics, and the scene works because it shows Lois is doing her job seriously rather than just automatically supporting him. Lex Luthor escalates the situation by weaponizing Superman's Kryptonian origins. He reconstructs the damaged message left by Jor-El and Lara, and then he broadcasts it. The message is about Superman's purpose and all that. It can easily be interpreted as an attempt to influence humanity. Luthor frames this as proof that Superman may not actually want to serve the interests of Earth. Public opinion turns against him, like, immediately. The government hands him over to Luthor, and then Luthor puts him in a pocket universe, which I think is so cool. I think it's cool. Lois, ever the baddie, works with Mr. Terrific, also a baddie, and also in Twilight. They locate Superman and they go rescue him. Their investigation becomes the main narrative engine while Superman is absent. Eventually they bring him back to Smallville and he recovers at the Kent farm with Martha and Jonathan. I like this version of Martha and Jonathan. I think they look right. Even after everything that has happened, Smallville is the place that he can reset. Luthor's girlfriend gives Jimmy Olsen evidence that Luthor has been supporting Baravia behind the scenes. The pocket universe begins to destabilize, and there's a rift that eventually splits Metropolis in half. The climax brings several threads together. Superman fights Ultraman. Mr. Terrific, who I now have a crush on because he was in Twilight, works to close the dimensional portal rift thing. Lois and Jimmy published the evidence that Luthor was being manipulative and all that. Superman's reputation is restored. The people stuck in the pocket universe are freed. Luthor's scheme collapses and the city begins to recover. Superman and Lois do a fly kiss. The framing of that shot, I think, is great. I really love it. Feels like a deliberate return to the classic romantic imagery associated with the character. Also, I think the costumes are great. He's red and blue and she's purple. Perfect, love it. Also, Kara is there for her dog. The end. The film leans so heavily into optimism and sincerity. It treats Superman as someone who genuinely believes that people can be better. James Gunn's writing, I think in general, feels very comfortable with that tone. The first viewing of the movie felt extremely strong. The novelty of seeing a very bright, hopeful Superman again after darker films made it stand out immediately, I think. I glazed it super hard in my last DC video though. I gotta relax, sorry. On a second viewing, it does not hit as hard as I remember. Some of the initial excitement fades once the surprise factor is gone. But also, I did really like when everyone was nice for 2 weeks after it came out. Of course, we seemed to get very unwoke after that, but the 2 weeks were very nice. Lois is consistently one of the strongest elements of any Superman adaptation, except for that musical, and I think that continues here. Across nearly every version of the character, she remains one of the most engaging parts of the movie. She is active and competent and central to the plot rather than just, like, being Superman's girlfriend. Also, every single one of her outfits were really cool. The cinematography, for the most part, was a really major strength. The camera work and color palette are extremely bright, which, like, I really like it. I'm sorry I'm glazing it again, but It was really good. The film is visually optimistic in a way that contrasts strongly with the darker look of especially Cavill's Superman films. There is one scene at the end when he goes on his little rant about humanity where you are blinded every 5 seconds by the sun behind him.
That is where you've always been wrong about me.
And I think that it ruins it a little bit if they like manage to make like a halo effect or something, but no, you just get like in the face. It's really annoying, but for the most part it is pretty good. Luther's portrayal also stands out to me. The design of the character is very direct, completely bald, like so bald, like there is no hair on that man. He's very angry all of the time, and he's constantly scheming. His hostility towards Superman drives most of the plot. The soundtrack is strong as well. It supports the heroic tone without becoming distracting, and also I think James Gunn has really good taste in music. I liked Foxy Shazam before Foxy Shazam was cool, okay? I think David Corenswet fits the performance really well. He plays Clark as sincere and slightly awkward and very open emotionally. His Superman feels confident without being distant, I think. He's one of the very, very human Supermans. The distinction between Clark Kent and Superman, though, is not as present as I would like it to be. I think this interpretation leans back towards the traditional idea of Superman as optimistic and someone who believes in people. Not as great, amazing, cool as I remember it being, but it is a really fun movie. And he's a very fun Superman. He looks very Superman. He acts very Superman. He talks very Superman. That's Superman. Still though, I think 78, maybe 80 at a push. It's really good. I really like it. Channing Tatum in the Lego movie is one of the smallest Superman appearances in the entire lineup, but I think it still manages to capture a surprisingly recognizable version of the character. Also, I think it's too important to get rid of. I love the Lego movie. It's a great movie. Tatum's Superman comes up briefly among a group of master builders, which, first of all, did they name that intentionally? Is that like an innuendo or a play on words? The role is a cameo, but the characterization is clear immediately. He is confident and slightly smug and very comfortable with his own reputation. I think because the movie is operating within the Lego parody universe, the character leans into exaggeration. The self-serious, heroic energy is pushed way further than usual. Superman isn't the emotional center of this story, which usually means I would cut it out, but you know what? It's my video, so I'm leaving it in. I think most of the humor comes from the interactions with Green Lantern. The dynamic is intentionally lopsided. Green Lantern is enthusiastic and desperate for approval, and Superman barely acknowledges him. It's a quick gag, but it works because it plays off the long-running joke that Green Lantern struggles to gain respect among the Justice League lineup, and after seeing the Lanterns trailer, that joke is gonna keep running. The voice performance itself is fine for what the role requires, I think. Tatum plays the character very straight. The humor comes from the situations rather than the exaggerated delivery. As a Superman performance, obviously it's extremely limited. There's no Clark Kent and there's no Lois. There's no exploration of the character beyond basic iconography. He's there mostly as a symbol for the DC universe. What elevates it, I think, is the film itself. The Lego movie is genuinely one of the stronger animated comedies of the 2010s. I love it. It's great. The script is fast and the pacing is tight, and the movie balances parody with sincere storytelling surprisingly well. Even the small cameos benefit from that quality, I think. I'm only gonna give him a 30 because, I mean, he's very minimal. It works for the tone of the movie, and I can't give him a high score, but you know, if I wasn't bound by my own rules, I would give him a 70. I spent a very long time not quite sure if Nicolas Cage's Superman in The Flash was a real thing or if it was like AI. I'm still not quite sure. In the late 90s, Cage was attached to a Tim Burton version of Superman called Superman Lives. The production collapsed before filming. When he suddenly appears during the multiverse sequence in The Flash, the moment is about acknowledging the strange piece of superhero movie history. The sequence itself is a bit surreal. It throws together alternate versions of DC characters from across like different continuities, and Cage's Superman appears fighting a giant spider, which is a direct reference to one of the unused script ideas. His performance is brief, obviously, again, there's going to be a low score. Cage as Superman is a interesting hypothetical. He's very good at like eccentric characters, especially in like deliberately strange films like that FNAF knockoff. Whether that would have worked in a Superman movie is hard to imagine. The design also leans heavily into old concept art, including like the long hair and like he just looks so weird. I think the cameo works as a curiosity value, and that's kind of it. I'm only giving him a 20 because getting to that point I had to watch a very large portion of The Flash, which doesn't help its score. That was a shit movie. The premise of DC League of Super Pets is fucking stupid. The Justice League is captured and their pets have to rescue them, and I mean, it's a kids movie. In practice, it ends up being way more competent than I expected. You know, despite my ancient age, I had a pretty good time. The story focuses mainly on Superman's dog Krypto and a group of other animals who have powers, and they attempt to rescue their owners. Superman is not on screen very much, but the characterization still matters because the relationship between him and Krypto drives the whole emotional setup. Krasinski's version of Superman is very straightforward and recognizable. He's calm and he's responsible and he's clearly devoted to Lois, so extra points. The film presents him as someone trying to balance hero responsibilities with a normal person life. The dynamic is one of the better parts of the movie. Superman isn't defined by power in this. He's defined by being a decent person who happens to also be extremely powerful. Even when he's captured and unable to act, the story treats him as a moral reference point for the rest of the characters. One consistent weakness is Dwayne Johnson. Sorry, he is getting better. When he first started being in movies, he was a bit shit, but I think with the one that he was in with Emily Blunt, he's getting better. His performance in this is serviceable, but not particularly expressive compared to the rest of the cast. The central character, despite being like an overly energetic dog, is very flat. Also, the animation style is very typical like modern studio approach where the environments look really polished, I guess. The human characters look globby. I couldn't think of another word that more accurately describes them than globby. Still, I'm gonna give him a 55 because the movie ends up being harmless. It's very watchable. It's funny sometimes, I guess. Superman doesn't dominate the story, but the version presented here is solid enough. He is powerful and decent and clearly loved by the people around him. I need you to understand something. I have been doing this for way too long. I think I've been recording for 2 weeks straight at this point. That is too long. I haven't been outside like ever. I have stared into the red and blue abyss, and it has started staring back. I thought it'd be like, you know, it'd be pretty simple. Like, the more I watch, the more I would understand, and then the easier it would be to pick somebody. But there are so many. One guy has the perfect voice, and then one has the perfect smile, and one has the best Lois, and one guy has the best Lex. One guy cries perfectly but can't convincingly throw a punch, and then one guy looks like a fucking fridge. One has incredible writing, but it looked like it was filmed with a fucking microwave, and then one has amazing action, but feels like he'd never actually help people, you know? You know what ties all the good ones? Pants. All of the good ones are wearing pants. That's the only objective thing I can take from this. If you're wearing the silly pants, you are probably a pretty good Superman. But I'm sitting here, or I'm lying here, with spreadsheets. It's a Google spreadsheets, I can't afford Microsoft. Trying to reduce 90-year-old cultural myths into decimals. Like, what am I doing, you know? What does half of this bullshit even mean? Who gave me the authority? Who am I to judge Superman? I'm not even super. I'm also not a man. Though someone did say I looked like a man once. That was a bad time. I don't know how to fix a tire. I don't use 13-in-1 soap. How am I supposed to decide whether any of these men best embody Superman? How am I supposed to decide who best embodies hope and truth and the fundamental goodness of humanity? I am not goodness of humanity. I click not today every time Morrison's asked me to donate to starving children or cancer or whatever. This feels like a job for somebody who owns a cape. I don't own a cape. Superman is not even real. That's my other issue. He is this weird American folk myth that keeps reincarnating every decade, and every generation makes the Superman that they need. There's wartime propaganda Superman, and dad TV Superman, and rom-com boyfriend Superman, sad divorced Superman, punching God Superman, animated therapy voice Superman. Maybe there isn't a definitive Superman. Maybe it's impossible. Maybe the Superman is the friends that we made along the way. Maybe the real Superman was inside us the whole time. What do I even mean when I say the definitive Superman? What the fuck even is that? Why have I done this to myself? This time could have been better spent applying for jobs. There are too many tones and too many interpretations. You can't solve this. This is not something you can solve. Maybe we'll never find out the real Superman. Maybe he doesn't exist at all. Maybe the search itself is the point. It's this guy. These are hearts, by the way, not butts. We get here. Here is the part where I tried to be normal about Smallville. I will fail. I saved it for last for a reason. Did you see that? Did you feel the build up? Did you see it? I think if I started with this one, the whole video is over. Like, pack it up, go home, delete the spreadsheet, delete this stupid fucking channel. The premise of Smallville is so simple that it sounds boring when you say it out loud. Clark Kent, Smallville, Kansas farm boy, meteor shower, weird rocks. Suddenly half the town has like superpowers and trauma. He's got abilities he doesn't understand, alien parents he didn't ask for, and one of them is frankly quite a fucking asshole, and algebra homework, and school crushes. That he's trying to figure out who he is while the universe is telling him that he's like this super cool god thing. This is not Superman already exists. This is more, what if becoming Superman took frankly quite a lot of time? And I think that's the thing that got me, because almost every other version kind of starts mid-myth. The cape is already on, he's already looks maxing, he knows who he is, and he's arrived fully formed. But here, in over 10 seasons and 217 episodes, we get to watch him earn it. For 7 entire seasons, 7 of 10, this guy is just helping people, even without the Superman stuff. Not because it's destiny, not because there's a symbol, although there is one burned into his chest multiple times, not because the world expects him to, and also he is the strongest, coolest guy. It's not like the police are gonna do anything in these situations, you know? He's just there because he wants to be there. He sees someone who is in trouble, and then he runs off to fix it. And that's it. That's the whole premise of the show. I think in my own opinion, it is Marvel's Netflix Daredevil in terms of good street level morality, personal stakes. Every choice stems from every other choice. And I think the show makes him work for everything. He doesn't even get to be Superman for most of it. Once he's an adult and he reaches Metropolis and has a job and everything, he's just like the Blur. This half urban legend red and blue streak saving people in the background. The word Superman I don't think is said properly until the finale. It makes it feel like a title that you graduate into. This dude has to pass 10 seasons of emotional exams before they let him do like the wispy hair thing. He starts off wanting to be normal. He wants to do American football, and he stalks his crush through a telescope like a loser, and he tries not to explode the tractor by accident. And then Jor-El keeps throwing trials at him, and some cosmic overbearing dad going, "No, you're built for more than this." And instead of turning into a tyrant, which would be so easy, he decides he's gonna be hopeful and he's gonna be good, and the vibes, immaculate. I love it. Every episode eats, dude. The soundtrack alone, Remy Zero doing Save Me, I think saved me. It's so aggressively early 2000s, it loops back around into being timeless. I miss having big long TV shows with a million episodes that were like 50 minutes long. We need that back. You millennials were so lucky and you didn't even know it. So there is a lot of filler. There's a vampire episode in season 6 that is so poorly done. There is Freak of the Week plots for the majority of the first couple seasons where a guy gets powers because he like ate kryptonite or something and now he wants to punish everyone for it. Some of the filler episodes are very campy too.
The crown's mine, bitch. Genius.
CGI sometimes looks like it was rendered on a microwave. It aged so badly in that regard. They say each other's names at the end of the sentence every 3 fucking seconds, and we get it, man. There's 2 of you in a room.
Lex, a flex.
Hello, Clark.
Lex.
Clark. Think, Clark.
Lex.
Clark.
Till I met you, Clark.
Who else would you possibly be talking to? And yet, despite its troubles, I was locked in. Every episode, 10 seasons, 20 episodes a season, 40 minutes each. Again, you millennials ate good and you didn't even know it. We have to talk about the characters around Clark because they are just... And that matters too, remember? Wouldn't blame you if you didn't. This video is a fucking decade long. This might be genuinely one of the best Lex Luthors put to screen. Watching Michael Rosenbaum play him is like watching a magic trick, and also you're on like a shit ton of cocaine. You see the manipulation and the justifications for every action and every word milliseconds before he does it. It's so terrifying. I love it. He's very charming and he's funny and he's tragic. I think he's convinced parts of the audience and Clark himself that it's Clark's fault that their friendship falls apart. You start defending him. You're like, well, maybe he has a point. He's bold and hot. And then you realize you've been emotionally manipulated. He is the gaslighter of the century. Season 3, episode 8's Shattered. Lex goes a bit insane for some time. And I think the acting work in this episode is just... I didn't look it up, but I hope he won awards for it. If he didn't, I'm gonna give him one. The look on his face when he sees Clark smush a car in and save him, and he realized that he's been lied to this whole time. Wow, dude. It's perfect. It's perfect. One thing though, I absolutely hated Lex and Lana. Lexana, Lanix, whatever they were calling it. When he asks her if she doesn't actually want to marry him in season 6, episode 19. That made me so nervous, dude. Like, girl, run. I was scared. He is such an incredible actor.
Did you see Clark on our wedding day and tell him you didn't want to marry me? Did you?
Yes.
Lionel showing up every week with that full head of luscious hair to emotionally ruin his bald little bitch son is cinema. And when he shaves his hair at his lowest while he's in jail, I think it's clearly a dig at his bald loser son. It's so funny. Somehow they give that man a redemption arc, and I bought it even though he was the evilest man ever in the first couple seasons. I don't even know how, but like when he died, sorry, spoilers, but when he died, I was so devastated, man. Lex is my favorite character. I really truly hated him, like for real, for a little bit when he did that. Season 5, episode 19, Onyx, is where Lionel's redemption starts. The range is just so great with John Glover too. I couldn't imagine anyone else in his place when he is acting in Clark's body, so maybe he should get an honorary Superman score. 100. You couldn't convince me that they didn't body swap in that episode. It was amazing. Perfect Superman is John Glover, clearly. Lois is such a baddie in every universe, and she's a baddie in this one too. She is so strong and independent, and she doesn't take Clark's shit in the beginning.
Okay. You're gonna be fine. I know you're gonna be fine. Everyone I've ever hit was all right.
Despite being tied to Clark in every single universe and every timeline, she is so completely and utterly her own person in this, and she is magnificent. Like all the other Loises, she's very hands-on with her job, and she doesn't take shit from no one. I love her so much. Perfect casting. The show as a whole is very chaotic in the best way. Clark has a weird fear of heights, despite being able to fly. Everyone gets knocked unconscious and beaten the shit out of them like 500 times but no one has any brain damage. Torture is just a mild inconvenience for these people. People get blown up and stabbed and shot in the chest so many times that at one point Clark had to go into Lex's brain to like pull him out, because I assume just traditional coma was like too boring. These people should be dead, and also in massive amounts of debt. They're in an American hospital almost every week, and they're not homeless. Is Smallville just completely disconnected from the rest of America? Imagine watching this live, waiting a year between seasons. Every finale is technically the penultimate, and then they show the actual finale in the first episode of the next season. Waiting that long would have killed me, dude. Maybe you millennials aren't that lucky. I have some issues with it. Obviously, the Lana storyline refuses to die. Sure, Clark and Lana in the beginning, fantastic. I like a slightly toxic couple, but she goes away for a bit and then Clark realizes she likes Lois, and then Lana comes back. Clark gets all boy horny about her and then wants Lana again, and they have to make Clark allergic to her to finally finish this stupid fucking relationship. Like, give Lois a chance, please. I'm begging you, dude. Season 8 of Lana vs. Clovis feels like being engaged and finding out that your fiance texted their ex the night before for closure. Horrific. Negative points. Stop that. Sometimes they get infected with the "if you kill him, you're just as bad as them" virus, and it's so annoying. And Linda Lake's whole thing just makes me want to leave the room. She's incredible. She is such a creepy woman. I do not care about any of those issues, because when it hits like nothing else. The acting is just so good. Like, oh, I could go on forever. It's so good. We gotta wrap this up. Season 10 especially is very warm and hopeful and tense. Everything pays off like nothing else. I've never seen a show be so consistently mid but also amazing. Cameos like the Justice League actually matter. Setups from years ago come back. The finale is basically a feature film, and it lands every emotional beat. You feel 10 seasons of growth click into place. You feel Clark finally become the symbol, the Superman. The Superman. He chose to be this way, and I love that. He is Superman. It's this guy, Tom Welling. I'm not exaggerating when I say this might be the most amount of work I've ever put into anything. Like, genuinely, I've put more time and more research and more emotional energy into this video than I have put into 3 full years of my degree. A degree that cost me £40,000, which I am sure I will never pay back. At no point during that time did I ever make a color-coded spreadsheet ranking upwards of 60 men on how much they ate down in spandex. But here we are. Also, tell me who your favorite Superman is in the comments, so then we can talk about it. I think I said Superman 322 times in this video. 323 if you count that one. So if you were doing shots, you're dead. But seriously though, thank you for watching. If you made it to this point, good on you, bro. If you'll excuse me, I'm gonna go outside and touch some grass.